If more of you supported the show, I'd be less sick of podcasts.
Blah, 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 blah.
Sending out good vibes.
Blah, blah, blah.
Good vibes.
Blah,
Good vibes.
blah, blah.
Good vibes. Good vibes.
108 breaths of deep gratitude and prayers for guidance and protection. And put on a didgeridoo and shamanic drumming track. Shivers or vibrations and stuff like that.
Okay, guys, welcome back to the Grand America Show. We are going to be chatting with friend of the show, I guess. Yeah, friend of the chats. Anyway, Damon Langlois. A little bit later about his sandcastle career, I guess. I mean, what else do you call it? The guy's made a living at sandcastle. It's not even, it's art, but it's like almost on an industrial scale.
Oh yeah, it's amazing.
It's pretty wild stuff.
But I mean, because he's not only one of the best artists from way back, but he's been designing some of the way to do it. Because I guess it's all designed with, what do you call it, like form work and all that, and then you kind of have to start with a pile and then get to a specific thing. I mean, it's a fascinating chat. Like, we got into the techniques of like all this stuff, and we also talk about the history of the whole competition, like, which is weird because it was from a couple places where I grew up. So it has its roots, like at least the world competition part from Western Canada. And yeah, it's a pretty fascinating story.
Absolutely, it's a good one. You got the book now, right? What do you think?
The book is unbelievable. Yeah,
it's
actually, the website is very, very good as well. It's got a ton of content on the website too. Storiesinsand.com. And I mean, it's about like it's mind-boggling. It's the Stories in Sand, the Arabian Nights, and it's sort of part art and part storybook. 276 pages, all color, hardcover. Talks about like Alibaba, and this is all like it's that big Kuwait sort of like city in sand. They made like this huge, like almost like a what do you call it, a amusement park out of sand, but with all these mythologies and tales from Arabia, like Alibaba and the 40 Thieves and the Angel of Death and the Rich King. There's some stuff I can't pronounce in there. I'm not going to try. It's fascinating,
I'd like to go check one of those out. I really would. I think I'd like to be there for the whole process. Watch them make the piles and do the form work and take it down.
Yeah, totally.
It would have been neat to see the Arabian Nights one, though. I mean, it is fantastic stuff. You guys will get a kick out of it. Of course, if you want to skip our lazy ramblings, if you don't want to listen to our bullshit, you want to get straight to the interview, there's always a timestamp in the show notes. Just click on that. It'll take you right to the start of our chat with Damon.
And I'll just do a quick bio right now while we're talking about him and the art and stuff. So he's the 5-time world champion, World Championship of Sand Sculpting winner, designer of the Guinness World Book of Records tallest sandcastle. That's from 2015. And creator of Liberty Crumbling, the most shared sand sculptor on the internet. That's an amazing one with one of the old U.S. politicians in it. Like, he's sitting down and it's just unbelievable. This book is the result of Damon being the creative director of the largest sand sculpture park ever made. That's the one we were talking about. The park was 6 football fields in size and was based on the stories of the Arabian Nights. Damon spent months researching these ancient tales, reading and curating the best stories and translations. He wrote them into shorter, more concise versions, originally for the artists to give them direction with their sculptures. Oh, I think I missed that part. How awesome is that? I love how they had some autonomy on how to do the actual stuff, right? Like, they weren't giving them exactly all the little details. Like, they were able to do some of the stuff on their own. These stories sat in a folder for almost a decade until he decided to make this book. As the creative director of this event, he directed the sculptors during the construction for 3 months. His photos of that time and the final creation are paired with his rewritten stories to make this book unique. This unique book, Stories in Sand.
It's worth picking up. I know a few people from the chats have picked it up already. It's definitely worth picking up. It's like a nice coffee table book. You can sort of take your time getting through it. The pictures are great. And yeah, he really did a great job. It was well worth the effort to put that thing together, I'd say.
These are the things I just can't even imagine doing myself. Like, it's just like I just don't have the art or music sort of talent for these types of things in me at all. Can't even picture how somebody would go about doing this. I can't even draw like a stick man. Never mind about a 3D sculpture of ancient mythology. So, what have you been doing? You were out camping for a weekend there? How was it? What'd you do?
Camping's always good. Just camped. The kids did a lot of beach stuff. And no sandcastles. No, all the water's super high right now. So the drought has turned into not a flood, but everything's definitely at healthy levels. I don't know about up north, but down south. I don't know about down by Lethbridge either. I think those guys are usually a little harder hit than we are by
Summer?
And just drought in general. They get less rain. It's like the further north you get, the more rain you get, and the further west you go, the more rain you get. The further east you go, the less rain you get. You start getting less and less as you get into the Cypress Hills. And even out just an hour or two east of here, it's very rarely. On my way to see you, it was raining out in the fields that I hunt antelope in, and I actually text Miles because it's such an anomaly. I was like, holy cow, it's raining out here, dude. So it's all green. Everything's so green everywhere right now. It's crazy. And now it's hot as shit. So, it was definitely hot and beach weather. The kids just love the beach. There's not a lot of beaches in Alberta. So I found a good one.
Did you fish or anything? Or?
I did a bit of fishing. Yeah, caught a bunch of small ones, but I didn't bring the boat out. I might bring the boat out this weekend. I don't know. When it's this hot, it's really kind of pointless, The fish don't really bite as great. Doesn't seem when it's super hot. And you're in a boat on top of the water. You burn like a motherfucker. It's like just being on a piece of tinfoil. A giant piece of tinfoil. So definitely always seems to catch up on you out in the lake. But no, we had a good time. The kids caught a bunch of crayfish. They had a crayfish trap. So they caught tons, dude. I had to cook that shit up.
Really?
Crayfish up. Yeah.
Is that safe to eat?
I don't know. All the Asians are doing it, and they seem fine. So, dude, the amount of people chasing these crayfish around. You go down there at like 11 at night, and there's just kids and Asians everywhere catching crayfish. Yeah.
Wow.
So you just boil them for a while. I give them a good boil, and then whip them up, fry them up with some butter quick, and all they really eat is the tails. They just eat the tails like little mini lobsters.
Like lobsters, yeah, exactly. Huh.
I do not partake personally, but the kids get into it.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was a good test. Get the camper out. First time getting the camper out this year. I redid all the curtains and the wallpaper. Just messing around with some stuff. I don't use a fridge in it, so I disconnected that. I think I'm going to go ultimately with the solar system for power. That's what I've been poking around with. And, I've actually been pretty impressed with some of the stuff some of the solar can put out right now. I don't know what it can put out in the winter, but as far as my camping needs in the summer, it seems... you're not going to run your TV off it or your air conditioner or anything like that, but I don't do a lot. We really don't. The fan for a little bit here and there, charge the phones, charge the laptop here and there, lights at night, lights out around camp, and that, that's pretty much it. So that solar option seems well for us, but I was actually pretty impressed at how quick they charge back up.
Huh.
As quick as being plugged into my wall.
What is it? Can you tell me what it looks like? Like the system looks like?
It's just like a little box. You can either plug it into. I can either charge it on my, and I just got the smaller one to like poke around with, see what it was like, and so you can I can either charge it on my computer, or sorry, on not on a computer, on a 12 volt, like a car thing, or plug it into the wall, or with a solar panel.
So the solar panel, like it'll charge and hold. It'll hold that charge for a little bit in a battery type thing that you can then just use for charging all your stuff, and then reboot it with the solar power again the next day, kind of thing.
Yeah, it lasted us all weekend.
On
And I
one
just
solar charge.
yeah, not solar. I just put it
Oh, you didn't use the solar.
it came with like a 60% charge or something like that. So I just plugged it into the wall when I got home. But it gives you all the charge times, and the solar is the same as the plug it into the car takes a while longer.
How much was it?
It was only like four. Well, with the solar panel, I guess it'll be probably like 600.
Okay.
But you could scale. I mean, you can scale this up to. It looks like some pretty.
You can connect or add panels and stuff to it, or
Yeah, I was looking like up on like I've got the one for a few $100. I might upgrade it a little bit to maybe the unit that's like 3 up from this one. But I was poking around their website, and they have got some units that are like nuts. So it looks like you could pump that thing up, and I mean, the problem is everything we do just uses so much power, bro. You know what I mean? Like if just a fridge is just drawing fucking power like crazy, you need a lot of solar panels to run a fridge and stuff like that. So, I mean, I don't know how effective it would be in a survival situation. It would be useful for sure, but it's not going to run like a heater all night. But if you needed it for some lights and a radio, and you had the solar panels, I think it seems like it'd be useful for that sort of thing.
well,
Yeah.
I mean, it might run. Would it? Well, I mean, it depends on what type of heater, but you could probably get a low voltage or whatever you call it heater that could run for a few hours in the middle of the night if you charge it all day. Like it might do that.
Heaters are just tough because they're like
They draw so much.
they draw a lot of fucking power. Heating and cooling seems to be the main clinch points.
Yeah.
So you'd need to. It needs to. But the other thing I figured out is that propane it never expires. So nowadays you can get propane generators. You can get propane. Like my buddy had a propane truck 20 years ago. So you could buy a vehicle that's converted to run on propane, and just, I don't know how big, but you could get a few propane hogs out on a property, and that's the fuel that you could stockpile.
Right, because it's not going to go like in 2 years it's still the same, whereas gas gets shitty after a couple of years.
In 10 years, it's still the same. And it's great for heat. You can use it to generate electricity and run a car on it.
Or even like you're saying, like a flame heater type thing. Even you could set up some real good heating with propane.
Yeah, you could just run your furnace on propane. I'm sure you can just buy a propane furnace.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to outfit your property with a bunch of propane hogs and start dumping thousands of dollars into propane, you definitely
you could convert your actual heating over to it. Yeah.
Yeah, you'd want to convert your heating. Maybe not your power all the time, but you'd want that ability to switch your power over to it. So you're generating enough power to at least run your essentials off of your own propane, and you can go and fill up your truck and drive around on the propane as well.
I wonder what's the mileage like for that?
He had like a big propane tank in the back of his truck. I can't remember exactly how often he was filling up. I couldn't tell you. There's probably someone who's listening who's got a little more experience with it, but it was at the time. Now, I don't know where it is now because I was actually thinking about it the other day, funny enough, because it's just a place that I drive by all the time in the city. That actually where he used to fill up his truck, because there's only, that was just one of the places that sells propane. And the price of propane has like tripled since he was filling up his truck back then. It was like 30 some cents or something like that. And now it's like maybe 80s.
Wow.
80s. But it takes quite a bit of it. Like you have a little mini propane. I just can't remember how long it lasted them. But it was cheaper than running gas at the time. And it was a truck. It was a fucking truck with four-wheel drive.
Interesting. Did he do it himself or was it professionally done?
He bought it like that. It was already converted over. I don't know what the process is to convert an already thing, but you know, when I think about it now, he sold that thing, and I was like, dude, if I would have known what I know now, I would have not let. I would have taken that thing because, dude, this was in 1980 or 82 Chevy Scottsdale fucking converted over to propane. I mean, probably the ultimate apocalypse fucking truck, honestly. It probably got no real electronics in it, or the electronics are small enough that you could have them, you know, you could store those electronic components in a Faraday box someplace and just have them on the shelf in a few layers of this or that. And if the ship blows up, you could replace them and then you're just good to go. I think that's the way to do it. I mean, maybe some listener out there can see the hole in my thing, but I think I'm going to do my camping thing with solar. It really, and then I was like, so now I was talking to some other guys that are running some other systems, and I really think that's where we go. It makes me kind of wonder where that kind of tech could be for a personal usage level in another 20 years, you know,
Or even 5 or 10. I mean,
like to the point where I can just run, you know, for a few $1,000. I'm just on my own for power now. Fuck you. So like all the time.
yeah.
And then the battery tech is to the point where you buy like a, you know, $5,000 unit that you put in your basement and it'll hold a week of power at a time. We will. It seems like we could get there.
People can do it. I mean, my uncle, shout out to my Uncle Dave, like the Uncle Dave from the early Grimerica support. He was one of our first supporters, man. He was in the hospital recently. He made it out of ICU. Like he was on his deathbed. He got out. He's going to long-term care.
Again?
He might have been the first double lung transplant in Canada.
Yeah, isn't this like Uncle Dave's like third bout with death?
Oh, probably. Yeah, he just had COVID recently too. I mean, it's crazy. So he made it out anyways, and he seems to be in stable condition. So he's just a tough son of a bitch, and he ain't gonna die yet. But big shout out because he was always fun to get his support on the show and talk about it. I wanted to have him on because he was off grid like back in the 90s. He went out into the bush, went fully off grid back in the 90s. Like he made it happen. He said to me, like I had a chat with him a couple weeks ago. He's like, yeah, I had my office, my home office. So he was working out of the home off grid with a view of the green pasture. Like he had a beautiful view out his office window.
What was he doing for power back then? I mean, nothing was really there then, right?
I know. Well, so I think he had a bit of solar and a bit of wind, and geez, I don't even remember. Like was it based on solar and wind, or what else there might have been? I don't know if he had in any geothermal or anything like that back then, but I don't know. But he was telling me the stories too about he brought over like you know how you're talking about the current like crisis of expertise and all that, right? He worked for Pratt when he was in HR for Pratt & Whitney, right? Back in the days when it was a personnel department, right? Not human resources. And he moved to Toronto or to one of the big cities, Mississauga maybe or something, to bring on 5,000 engineers for Pratt & Whitney, I think, or was it 1,000? It might have 1,000 or 5,000 engineers, or I think it was 1,000 engineers over 5 years. They had a plan to bring in, like, to hire that many engineers at Pratt & Whitney back then. I mean, it made me think of how industrialized that was back in the 70s, 60s and 70s, you know, with the aircraft industries booming. And I mean, imagine having to bring in 1,000 engineers.
I couldn't imagine.
And I think he had to create a whole bunch, like it was office space for hundreds more people. Like they opened up a whole office and stuff in the city. And yeah, just awesome tales from Uncle Dave.
I couldn't imagine how many of those engineers would be absolutely useless in today's world. Cannon fodder, literal cannon fodder.
You mean like if you were doing that today, you mean compared to back then?
Yeah. If I had to like just gather 1,000 people, man, like 900 of them are just going to be people literally off the street. Hey, man, how's your drawing?
I don't know, dude. It's hard for people to find a job these days too. It's a weird environment right now. Everything's
Yeah.
online. Everything's online. You got to fill out all the applications online. You can't. There's no personal touch anymore. You can't just go in and harass them. Like, hey, I really want a job. I mean, we used to be able to just go. You bring your resume in, you go in, then you follow up every week until you get the job. Like that was the deal back then. Right? Show that initiative. You know.
Maybe it still is.
No, they don't want you showing up in person.
I don't want you showing up in person. But that being said, dude, the last dude that just showed up in person got hired
There you go. See,
because he just like showed up in his coveralls. Like he literally could have just started working. And I wouldn't say his name on the show anyway, but he worked for us for a long time and ended up quitting and moving back to BC. But yeah, he just showed up. He was like, he just wowed me.
Yeah,
like on
that's
this.
what I'm talking about.
And I was like, man, when can you start? I'm not hiring, but when can you start?
Oh, that's awesome story. See, I mean, I didn't want to give the wrong advice to these young people trying to get jobs, but I was like, man, it just is so weird now. Everything's changed so much compared to. I feel like an old fogey because we used to just, we would work until you'd never not have a job, right? You wouldn't ever quit a job until you had another job. And
Yeah, no, that's how I was raised too. You work, you're just working. Yeah, like I've never
not that I mean, I kind of don't really agree with that either, but in some ways that's just the world we're in and we have to be like that. I mean, that's just the way it is.
I would argue it always has been.
I know, but
it's a different type of work.
Yeah,
it seems less fulfilling because you're not directly connected to what the work is providing. You don't have to tan hide.
Oh, yeah. I agree with you. Yeah.
So we have some good news and some bad news.
You got some?
Well, the bad news is we don't have any new supporters this week, which is a real shame. No new
lords or ladies?
No, not. Well, we do have a make good lord, but we got no new nobles this week. No one joining the house of nobles. No one's getting any value from the show. I mean, we might as well just take a few weeks off. Take the summer off. No, we're just kidding. We do. We would appreciate some support, though. I mean, we do work. Like we were saying last week, I don't think we've really missed more than maybe 1 week in 10 years.
11 years.
And 11 years of releasing the show. So if you've gotten some value from any of those episodes or all of the episodes or however it works, head over to grimerica.ca/support today. Sign up for a monthly, make a one-time donation. Head over to grimericaoutloud.ca, sign up over there, or Adult Brain Audiobooks. Sign up over there. Whatever you can do to help support us. Of course, share the show with people. We're shadow banned all over, even though I know how popular it is to say you're shadow banned these days, but we are actually shadow banned.
True. I mean, it's ridiculous.
So
I was looking back to our 2017 and 2018 guests. I mean, we had a really good lineup going there between 2016 and 2018. Not that we haven't after that either, but I mean, like sort of before the censorship hit, we had touched on sort of some censorious topics, not really knowing they were that bad, really. And then, boom.
Look at us now.
Yeah.
It's banned from, not banned, but shadow banned. Anyway, we do have a make good on a Lord. I don't know how we forgot this one, how we let this slip by us. We're sorry, buddy. But we do have to make our buddy Ryan from Kansas, who's been running the chats now for almost as long as we've been doing the show, for no money and just a lot of bullshit. So thanks, Ryan. You are Lord Ryan from Kansas, warden of the Arkansas River Valley and the Grimerica chat. So
warden of the chats, yeah. Thanks, Ryan. He's been there all along. I kind of just automatically assumed. I guess I just didn't even realize that he wasn't on the list. Kind of just one of those auto things.
Auto.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Lord Ryan.
How you been? Going back on the road?
I got some stuff to read. Yeah, I'm going to help my sister. I'm going to do some more work for her, some painting. And I was out there painting the other day. So I got some more jobs lined up in the summer here. So yeah, mix of all kinds of stuff.
Keeping busy in your tie-dyed UFO shirt.
Yep. And I've got I want to read some emails. So like another good way, to support the show too is just to make contact with emails, recommend guests, feedback from the shows, all kinds of stuff. But a lot of people are following along with this Terrence Howard, Malcolm Bendall, where we have Jordan Collin coming on the show tomorrow from Alchemical Science, who's doing summaries of Bendall's work. We're sort of touching on that topic here and there. So he says, this is from the Telegram. Hi, Graham. I've been enjoying all your musings and reporting about cold fusion and limitless energy machines. I just came across the video after it was mentioned in a Santos Bonacci presentation. It's very compelling. Santos believes it ties in with the plane Earth or a level Earth model, as he believes we sit between the two toroidal fields, the blue and the red shown in the film. Can you hear that, like that fucking airplane going by?
Is that what that noise is?
Yeah. I think it's an airplane. I mean,
sounds like your neighbor's weed whacker.
Oh my God, it's a guy. It's a guy in a what? It's a guy in a parachute.
Really? Is he Chinese?
Paraglider. It's a motor paraglider.
Is he Chinese?
I don't know. He's way out there. What the?
Because the last time that happened, Israel got shot out.
Yeah, like Red Dawn. Red Dawn is happening right now. So the film is now 10 years old, and I can't seem to find out much more about David Lapointe, the scientist behind it. He doesn't even get a mention on Wikipedia, which seems curious. Lots on the toroidal fields in the video. I wonder if you knew much about this film or David Lapointe, as you've been into the subject for a lot longer than I have. So I'll put a link to the YouTube channel there. It's called The Primer Fields. Oh man, that does ring a bell. I bet you maybe I have seen it a few years back. The Primer Fields rings a bell. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes. Thanks, Herney. I don't really know what his real name is, but I know him in the chats or whatever Telegram as 23 Hunter there. And then I've got some emails here.
Oh, that's UK.
Oh, okay.
God darn it. No, I can't remember his name either. James.
Oh, cool. Okay. Oh, like the James from the UK.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Cool. We'll be seeing James when we finish setting up what we're setting up, right?
That's right. Yeah, I just seen him. He gave me. I actually have. I think I have some stuff for you.
Okay.
Like a book of stuff. Yeah. Fuck! I forgot about it. I can't see it.
So this is from Kenny. I wanted to ask you an important favor. Firstly, is it within your power to get Terrence Howard on your show? Please reach out to him for a podcast. He's a polymath and is correct in his research. Secondly, just as important, if not so more so, Mr. Howard has walked into the nepotism wall, known as, the scientific oligarchy. I want to help him get in contact with a particular scientist and his foundation. Please help get Mr. Howard in contact with Nassim Harriman and his team. They both are extrapolating the nature of reality using the 3D flower of life. The flower is actually a guide to explore the fourth and fifth dimension of existence and its associated physics, mathematics, and engineering. Applications lie in our 3D experience, technology. The goal here is to get published scientific papers on Mr. Howard's work. Resonance Science Foundation and Mr. Harriman should be able to help quite a bit. They have the resources and skills regarding this. At least this is my hope and understanding. So we were kind of going back and forth a little bit, and I kind of said, like, they're gonna know, like, Terrence, and I'm sure Nassim knows about Terrence after the JRE thing. I'm sure they've been following his work a little bit, or at least some of those guys have. So he's talking about the fulcrum point here with Howard and just want to see what he's actually replying to here. The fulcrum point that is being discussed here is called unification physics. It's the holy grail in science that everyone is after, per se. It is highly contentious. It is being sought after by the orthodox scientific community worldwide. In ancient times, the master builders, the ones that built the pyramids, the Great Pyramid being the ancient prime meridian wherein a system of interconnected megalithic sites developed off Giza. These people called it something else. It was called the Law of One in times past, pre-Younger Dryas. Today, individuals such as Terence, Nassim, Malcolm, Randall, and others, all prominent figures in the study of this one law, are prominent figures. There's only one universe. There's only one law in that sense. Everything is part of and subject to universal laws. We are operating in this one thing. So basically, I'm having similar mixed feelings about it regarding the podcast. I'm still reading between the lines from that podcast. If I hit a baseball one time, one base hit. Next at bat, I hit another single. 1 times 1 is 2. We were kind of talking about how I thought that I was pretty disappointed in the end with that Terence and Eric Weinstein JRE. Did you watch that?
I did. Yeah, I did watch that.
What was your thought about it?
Which part? I mean, I don't know. It's I don't know. It was kind of just a shit show.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, at the start, I was like, okay, well, Eric's really trying here. It looks like, okay, he's going to, give it a shot. And then every time Terence would try to get to the meat of, and it wasn't, he wasn't doing it in a direct way. So there was that difficulty, but Eric would just shut him down and, you're teaching again. You're not doing this. It really did feel like, in a way, Eric's just so good at bullshitting that he can gatekeep and not make it seem like gatekeeping. That's kind of where I ended up with it. I didn't want to end up there. I really didn't. But in the end, I was like, he's just feels like gatekeeping. What do you think?
Yeah, I could agree with that. It seems like something. I mean, I don't know what I think of Terrence Howard either, but it's not. I could probably get a hold of Nassim. We are Facebook friends, but I don't. Get a hold of Terrence.
No, he was going to go to Jamie Janover and talk to Jamie about. I think he did. And Jamie said hi, and yeah, I think he's going through some of Nassim's crew there.
Pretty tough to track down Terrence Howard, I'm assuming.
Yeah, exactly.
So hey, if you could track him down for us, we will have him on the show. No problem.
Yeah,
we could do that.
So the other thing he mentioned is Nevin Parr, who I'm going to try to get on. This guy would be a prime guest for your podcast as well. I'm going to have a link to his Instagram in the show notes. He's talking about the Kundalini and some stuff from a more scientific angle, it seems. Haven't dug into him a lot. But then also got some emails from FD. The Bendel pod was wild. Thanks for the show, guys. I was about to send my pal the link. I've been telling him he might want to invest. Then Bendel said he'd claim the throne of Scotland. I mean, we definitely take him. That Ashton Forbes character has devoured himself with the technology, seemingly. He thanked George Howard for having him at the summit, but at the same time recounts a story of some clown whipping his knob out at the bar in the hotel, saying George probably wouldn't appreciate him telling this. What? I don't know about that. A while back, I read a couple of Gabor Mate books, which helped me to make sense of a few things in my life. I was telling folk it was essential reading. Foolishly thought medical types would be all about his findings, but I was devastated when I came across him on a podcast towing the Convid line hard. He wanted 2.5K per hour? By the way, The Sopranos is a solid 9 out of 10 TV show. I watched again during the pandemic, and it still stands up better than any pish being spunked out these days anyways. You already clarified, but I also went looking for addled brain. Ha ha. So he says, what did I ask him about this? I asked him about Malcolm is getting a little wild, Scottish Kings. Did you see our wrap-up podcast about the conference? He said, yeah, I listened to it, waiting eagerly for your inside scoop on the generator demos. I was kind of hoping for a more definitive, hell yeah, this is legit, jump aboard, folks, or a nah, this is a massive grift, abort. But I guess I can't have it all for nothing. I'm still pretty scoobied by the whole thing. I was in the same engineering maths class at uni as a bunch of guys who have gone on to build the A380 Super Jumbo at Airbus down the road. I wish I had done mechanical or aeronautical with them instead of music systems and could build a retrofit myself or even just find a job. Haha. It was hard to take Forbes seriously after he said Sunday they set up just two engines that don't have like a car attached to them. He's talking about Bendel's tests there. As I said to my pal right before the summit, Bendall seems unhinged, but everyone involved seems legit, seems genuine. They believe what they're doing, whether they're mistaken or having been MK Ultra, who knows? But they ain't bullshitting, if that makes sense. And I definitely don't recall the priests of Iona declaring Bendall king. Are there priests on Iona? That tiny little island? A rudimentary web search brings up images of some sort of old church. Iona Abbey, one of the oldest Christian settlements in Europe. Founded in 563 AD. Well, I guess there are. Maybe they did. But I doubt we'd hear about it on the BBC, and I don't see why Sausage Fingers Chaz has any more claim to the title. I'm willing to consider just about anything at this point, given the absolute state of the place and its occupants recently. And if we can get reduced emissions and increased fuel efficiency, then happy days. Throw the green crowd something to gnaw on. Stop them from ripping up the furniture. I also tried to watch Luke Caverns and Johanna James live stream, but I had to turn it off. I won't say anything else about that. I don't want to get them in trouble or him in trouble.
Let's not get anyone in trouble. Well, that's a nice note. Hey, speaking of notes, I do have a make good note from a few weeks back.
Okay.
From Michael Steinhauser. The note I want to read is the following. Tell everyone to quit being little bitches and send a couple bucks. Thanks again, brother, for all you guys do. Someday I'll quit being a little bitch and make it a point to come to one of the events. Good vibes. And I don't know what's going on here. I don't know if I've got the note, if I missed the note. I can't find the note anywhere. But you didn't get a note, about a birthday, daughter's birthday, turning 14 on July 3rd.
No, but that sounds like could be somebody that I met at Cosmic Summit and that's on her trips. Maybe? No?
I don't know, but happy birthday.
Happy belated birthday.
Happy belated birthday.
Hey, my birthday's coming up too.
3 days?
My birthday.
54?
54 in 3 days, yeah. That's a good reason to donate. Send Grambo a birthday gift.
Send Grandma a birthday gift. Yeah, that's right. That is a good reason. I got a wedding coming up too. This is another good reason to donate. We got a bunch of shit to do here. So support the show. America.ca/support. I will leave it at that. I think
hang on. We do have to talk about the trips though. And thanks FD for that great email. Yeah. Yeah, because he mentioned the trips, but we do have a couple coming up, right?
We do have a couple coming up. We have a great one with Randall Carlson, September 15th. Starting in September. There's some room left on that. There's going to be a great group. I was going through some of the sales. The people have bought tickets so far. It's going to be a good group. So it's a good one to get your butt.
We're going to travel down the gorge, right? Like start at Spokane, travel south, go to those sites in Lower Washington, and then cut across down the gorge and spend some days traveling around the gorge. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, there'll be there's a couple cool waterfalls. So it could definitely be one of the more, from a scenery perspective, definitely one of the more spectacular trips that we've done so far. The Scablands is great. It's a lot of like cliffs in the desert. It's great for flood stuff, and it's really profound when you're into the flood stuff. I'm predicting the Columbia Gorge is both. It's got that crazy river channel you're looking at, but then you also have these dope ass waterfalls, kind of like Palouse Falls is great. Sort of more of that. So that's great. And then of course we have the November Contacting Canada, where we have our elk meat dinner menu and stuff like that up in Invermere, right on the top of the mountain, right on the top.
And pizza from Without Papers Pizza.
We're going to do the WAP pizza Without Papers. Jesse, we had him on the show. We're going to do his pizza one night. A bunch of elk food, a bunch of elk meat, stuff with Brandon Powell, some cold stuff, some good stuff there. We'll do some breathing, some cold immersion.
Some hot stuff.
It's the hot springs. We're going to head over to the hot springs. That's a crazy drive over to them hot springs. You'll love it. I mean, the whole drive from the airport to the event is really phenomenal. We'll go to the hot springs, literal hot springs, natural hot springs right beside the river. You can go back and forth from one to the other. We'll spend the day down there. Of course,
You just got to get yourself to Calgary, really.
Just got to get yourself to Calgary. We will do the rest if you get yourself to Calgary. There's a couple cool add-ons to that trip too. If you want to go hunting with us, go hunting ducks and go shoot an antelope. Maybe we might eat some of that antelope at the event. Who knows? But we'll definitely. I mean, unless I miss, I'm sure we'll drop something in those 2 days. So there's a 4-day hunting add-on to the front of that if you're interested in it, and there is the stay an extra night psychedelic bash. So not really a bash. I guess that's a bad way to do it because it's going to be more of a guided thing with our buddy Brandon Powell. Him and his brother have done quite a bit of this stuff.
Mnemonic thing, kind of. Or?
Yeah, exactly. So it'll be breath work, and I mean, there's always a little bashing. We'll sneak in a little bit of bash, but we're going to do some of this other intentional stuff as well. That's an optional add-on if you want to add that extra night and go home Monday instead of Tuesday. So that's all there on the website. Go to contact@thecabin.com and click on one of those 2 links. We should update that site soon, but those are the only 2 that work. So
yeah, there might even be some karaoke going on there too.
There's usually karaoke. There tends to be karaoke.
Well, first time I've ever been there with one of them. Usually I miss the karaoke ones. So.
And Grandma's a real karaokeer. He takes it super serious.
No, I just got out of my shell and then did it finally.
He took it serious. He wouldn't sing.
Surprise
I did Big Buck
this year.
Have you been working on one?
No, but I got one that I'm gonna work on. Yeah.
You've been working on one all year. You're just gonna floor us with
no. I told you I haven't really been working on it, but I got one.
Elton John's Rocket Man. All right, guys.
It will be an old one from my genre.
We hope you enjoyed our lazy ramblings over Grant's birthday in 3 days. Other than that, enjoy the chat with the Sandcastle building, Damon Langlois.
All right, Damon Langlois, thanks for joining us. Friend of the show. Good to see you. Good to meet you, finally.
Yeah, good to see you guys.
Yeah. You're Canadian, right?
I am.
Okay. Yeah. Geez, I have these visions of people that have been around in the chats for years and stuff. And I picture you being back east somewhere. But, it's hard to keep track sometimes, too.
West Coast.
Yeah. Oh, are you West Coast?
Oh, yeah.
Well, then you must have. I think I went to a sandcastle competition in White Rock many years ago.
Oh, yeah. That's part of that. It's part of the lore for sure.
Part of
White
the
Rock
lore.
is where the original World Championships were. That's the original Sandcastle Riot.
Really? Eh?
Yes. Sandcastle Riot is an official term. You can look it up.
What does
Like
that
a
mean?
riot, like an actual riot?
Sandcastle Riot. Yes, an actual riot. We had one in Parksville
looking it
too.
up.
So
What do you?
It's
I don't
the two-
understand. What does that
the
mean?
2 Sandcastle Riots.
What does
So
that
White
mean?
Rock had
Destroy
a
each
big
other's
riot.
castles or something? Or
Well, it's more because of the party, but I just like the term Sandcastle Riot because that would be that's what they would be called. But no, White Rock had a big because it'd be a big party too, right? So they had a big like a riot there, and then the World Championships left White Rock and moved to Harrison Hot Springs, which is basically just outside Vancouver, and without that happening, I don't know if I would be a sand sculptor. So it is it's an interesting thing to bring that up.
wow,
then Parksville had a
Harrison,
sandcastle
which
riot.
was like Bigfoot country. Harrison Hot
Harrison's
Springs is
Bigfoot
full of
country.
Bigfoot sightings.
It is. John Green, who was the patron of the World Championships was he's a big Sasquatch hunter. He's like a guy. He's got multiple books.
No way.
He wrote The Apes Among Us. I unfortunately never went and saw his collection though. So it's one regret I have. He's passed away now, but he had a whole collection of castings and all sorts of stuff.
Did he think they were
I think
apes?
that's probably why I ended up moving to Harrison, most
Yeah.
likely.
Right. Did he
Yeah.
think they were apes or?
Well, it's interesting. If you read The Apes Among Us, it's a little bit. He's almost more documenting just the interesting element that these stories are the same or similar. There's like these similar relationships between these sighting stories all across the world. So The Apes Among Us is really about it's talking about other people's stories and documenting them and illustrating that all across the world that there's these similarities, right?
Right.
But in the end, he was a believer. I'm pretty sure. Even though in the beginning of his book, he's like, "Well, I don't know if I'm a believer."
So I find it fascinating that where I grew up is like where this like the world competitions. Like you're into the sandcastle. You've got a new book out, Stories in Sand. So we're going to talk about that. But I'm still sort of fascinated by. I didn't realize it was like a world hub for sandcastle building, like Harrison and White Rock.
It used to be.
It used to be.
Harrison's no longer
like in
either.
the 90s. Then in the 90s, early 2000s, or
The last World Championship was 2007, I believe. It might have been 2008.
the last one anywhere.
Anywhere, yeah.
Wow. Why? What happened? Too many riots?
Too many condos. So the council at Harrison Hot Springs eventually just didn't like it polluting their beach. Like it started, it was more welcomed in the early days because it was a way to bring in tourists during the shoulder season. That's why they did it in September. And then they lost their patron. Once they lost John Green, he was the patron of it, right? You lose the passion, the guy that really drives it. Then you lose the driving force. New condos come in. They don't really need the tourists anymore, and
They don't really want them anymore.
It's unfortunate because you can't. I wrote a letter to the council trying to explain to them what they had, because you can't fabricate that. Like this is something that just got built organically there and was accepted in a community that also grew. Like the sand sculpting world blossomed from something that was really relatively amateur then into something that is at a really high caliber. It's only getting more and more popular and exposed. And here, Harrison Hot Springs had the World Championship. It was accepted in the international community. And I tried to explain to them what they had. Like, you can't make that. It would cost millions of dollars to try to refabricate that type of thing. And they tossed it. So,
wow. So where did it go after that then? Like
nowhere. It's gone.
But there must be competitions everywhere. So these are all just
there's lots of competition
stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Like, but
There's
just
no
not
world
just not the worlds.
Yeah, just not the world.
Wow.
I'm
So
kind of
have you
okay
been
with further, but
competing?
I'm the last solo world champion. So,
When was that? Was that
The
what
last
does that?
well, actually, Harrison. So it was a couple of years. They had two more. I think it was two or three, because they did it at Federal Way, and then they did it once at Atlantic City, and that was the last one. So after Harrison, a guy by the name of Charlie Bolio kind of carried the torch, and I won the world championship. That was in Atlantic City.
Well, you won it for solo.
I did for
Wow.
solos. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I cried. You want me to show you a picture?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Hang on a second here. Let me see if I can find that.
So like this means that you had to do the whole thing yourself? Like there was a solo category?
Yeah, like as a
and then like a team category and stuff.
yeah, there's teams. Like I won the team category for 4 years at Harrison. I used to carve for the team, the Sandboxers,
Holy shit.
and then I won once as a soloist.
Wow.
Let me see here. Here we go. Let's see here. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
What did you
Susanna
make?
Lamar. That's what I'm going to try to bring up here.
And that was
as
in
I flick around these menus.
Yeah, that's okay.
Here we go. So it's called Fallen Empire.
Try and zoom in on that a little bit if you can.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, there you
How
go.
long did that take to make? How long did you have? Like, how long's your time limit?
It's like 3 days carving. 1 day pound up is a good way to break up the general competition scale, right? And
What's a pound up?
What's a pound up? Well, that's you first make your block of sand that you're carving, right? So that this gives you an idea, a little bit of course, there's some forced perspective there, but let me show you what a pound up is. So this here. Yeah, so first, basically, you're going to get a pile of sand, right? And then you compact that sand into forms, like so. And that's basically the magic of sand is the sand, water, and compaction. And in this case, I mostly just use water. The water itself does the compaction for you in a sense. So it's called supersaturation. So you fill these forms, lots and lots of water and
Wow.
sand, and then you foot walk it and it kind of vibrates it and settles it. And that gives you a block that's almost like a cookie is its consistency. Right. And then you're doing mostly subtractive. There's some additive elements to sand as well. Right. And then you basically slowly reveal your sculpture out of the sand. And
I have so many questions. I have so many questions. So the block, the formwork, is that specific to each design? Like you would need a you need a different one, right? For each one.
It can be.
It kind of like
you could do general stuff, but depending on the sculpture, certainly if it's larger. But at a competition scale, like you could use a general form block. This is actually pretty standard here in terms of a pound up, and you could do many different sculptures with that type of pound up.
Right. But only so many will fit into that size, I guess.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And that's was my Liberty crumbling sculpture that I did in Texas Sandfest in 2019.
And so you're making that look like archaic in a way too, right? Is that one of the things that got you, like when the Empire crumbled one, like you make it look like
similar themes.
Yeah, you make it look like it's it's not. You make it you age it in a way, right? It looks like it has a patina in a way.
Yeah, well, this was the whole thing of like the chair from the Lincoln Memorial is crumbling, right? So that was done super fast, last minute. Like this particular sculpture, same thing. This is beach sand too, by the way. And all sand is not equal. Like a lot of say mall jobs or pro jobs, you're using sand from a quarry that might be old river sand, lots of clay and silt in it. Beach sand is a different. This is good beach sand, but it's still beach sand.
Look at the detail of his trousers. Like,
well, I'm glad you noticed that because it's like everybody focuses on the face, but it's really like these legs and the feet, like the slightly inturned feet, giving the sense of discomfort, and the pant legs and the drapery, like that's really in the foreground. And if I mess it up, like a lot of times when you're carving, you've got 3 days, so your last day you're really scrambling to get it done.
So zoom in a bit.
Sometimes you'll be carving this, and at the last day, like you don't have a lot of time to be stepping back and looking at it and pondering and fixing and tweaking. You're just carving to finish. And so in this sculpture, I stepped back and you're like, oh thank God. You're like, whoa, because this could be out of proportion. And it's one of those things you don't notice it, but if it's wrong, it spoils everything.
Right.
And like this particular sculpture really felt like it just came through me. So many things were lucky there, like the weather, like you can have really nasty rain and wind in Texas and Texas Sandfest. And you can kind of see a little bit That's not really high enough resolution, but and I might have retouched it in Photoshop. But you can really see sometimes the damage, and the wind will just eat it away and erode it while you're carving it. It's pretty crazy.
Is there any time like so? Man, quarried sand, that's got to be something else. I don't know if I've ever seen quarried sand. Maybe that's the stuff I'm like buying for my aquarium.
Depends. I mean, actually, usually what happens is when you're going to a yard, you're asking for what they don't want. A lot of times it might be tailings. It might be plaster sand works pretty good. It's kind of weird because plaster sand's got really angular grains, and the grains really want to lock into each other. And that's part of it, right? That's why some beach sand isn't really good because it's really washed and tumbled. So river sand is really your best sand because it's got, it hasn't been washed and tumbled, angular grains, lots of different scale of grains. And then you've got clay and silt. And it's almost it's a little bit like concrete in a way, right? Like all those grains and then the water and then compression forms almost like a bond in there. And then certainly if it dries out and bakes, it gets even harder. Whereas beach sand is washed and tumbled. It's almost like stacking marbles. So it really depends. And so when you go to a quarry, you might be asking for what they don't want because the type of sand that's ideal for sculpting isn't really good for drainage, isn't really good for adding to concrete, isn't really good for those things. So a lot of times you have to go there in person and, find the vein or find their tailings, go, that's what we want. And they usually go, oh, that crap. You're like, yeah, that's what I want.
How did you end up making sandcastles? Did you obviously you're an artist. Did you just start with sand, or did you migrate into that, or is it just like a sandcastle thing that got out of control?
Kind of. I mean, most professional sand sculptors have somebody that introduces them to it, right? Like we've all made sandcastles or played in the sand, but me, like everyone else, I didn't really consider it like an artistic medium. And then my first job as a designer, I shared an office with a sand sculptor. They just formed a new team, the Sandboxers. And, he's thinking he's lucky. Here's an artist just landed in his lap. So he asked me to join his sandcastle team. And I just said, sure, not really thinking too much of it. And then we went to Harrison and we got second place competing against the pros. And from that point, I was hooked. And then I carved with the team for years and years. Yeah, it's weird. It's like you're either really hooked or you're repulsed by it because it's it's its own thing, right? You finish it and it's gone. Like that really makes people wonder, like, how can you do it? Like it's a lot of effort, especially in those days. Like we would go to Harrison, you'd have to dig 40 tons of sand out of the beach and pile it up, in a few hours. Physically grueling, still physically grueling. Like that solo sculpture, you're basically doing the same thing with about 10 to 12 tons of sand. And it's a lot of effort, and then afterwards it's gone. Or you might have a collapse. You really have to be willing to risk just losing it all, and in some ways making a fool of yourself. We always console the sand sculptor at a competition who has a collapse, being, well, you're part of the show. You're showing people that it's just sand. You don't want to be that guy, but.
So what happens? This is a thing where it'll actually just fail somewhere and collapse.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, you have collapses all. I mean, the biggest thing I think that defines a sand sculptor is you always finish. So even if you have a collapse, that's why we have another term. It's like you need the sand sculpting dictionary. It's got a recovery, right? So a lot of sand sculptors get a lot of respect for good recoveries. And even me in the sand sculpting community, like carving as a team at Harrison for years and years and years. And we were an amateur team, right? Like none of us on the team in those early days were doing professional jobs or anything. We're competing at Harrison with a lot of sculptors that are professional or pros. and being on a team, you kind of disappear. And I got noticed, and people started talking to me and respecting to me after I had a collapse on one of our pieces, and we recovered from it. We did something with it and had a good recovery. And that's when it was like, it felt like it was, oh, well, okay, well, you've passed that hurdle, I guess, right?
What did you do? What was it? What was the story about that?
Oh, the piece was called Love at First Fright, and it was a Frankenstein kind of scene. And the Frankenstein's monster was kind of cradling the bride of Frankenstein, had a wicked Frankenstein monster's head looking down, and stood up the whole day, and then came back the next morning, and it was gone. Right, the head was gone.
The head was gone.
My head was gone, and you're like, yeah. So what I ended up doing is I ended up carving his head in his other hand. So he had the Bride of Frankenstein, and then because he's a monster, he's Frankenstein's monster. It's kind of made sense. And then we finished with that. I think we still placed. Even I think we still got third place. So, yeah.
Oh man, I have so many questions. So do you have to start from the top down all the time too? Is there a total way to go? And do you have to have it all designed on paper first? Like, how do you all follow the same vision? Because I mean, they look so sort of perfect.
I mean, that's the other element that kind of defines your capability as a sculptor is you've got to work with other people on this artistic vision. So like a lot of times on pro jobs, big jobs, you're working with other people on the same sculpture and wanting to tie it together and make it make sense. Certainly when we were doing that as a team, we actually had some advantage because we were all in the same place together, so we could plan. And that's one way how we as amateurs were able to compete with the pros, because we could all get together, make a plan, and kind of sometimes we'd even practice and be able to execute it. Whereas a lot of the other sculptors, they would come in and do a team piece, but they wouldn't have a lot of time for planning. Of course, they're doing it all the time, so they wouldn't need it so much. Yeah, but you don't really. My first solo project, I overplanned. So you don't really want to overplan your sculpture because you lose the energy in it. Like what I did in my first solo project, I really wanted to win. That was mistake number one. And then I made this. Well, yeah. So I made this maquette. It's called like a pre-sculpture. And with that sculpture, I basically what I was doing is I was turning myself into a human milling machine, because of course you're under this time constraints. I pre-made the sculpture, and I was even thinking about like I'll make these cuts, really planning it out. And then when I made the sculpture, well, a few things happened. One, being on the team, I was kind of the ringer, so I would always carve the faces. I would block things out, do the expressions. Well, here as a solo artist, it's just me. And then I come to the point where I was doing these sirens on these rocks, and all of a sudden I get to the rocks, and I realize I can't carve rocks. I don't carve rocks.
Oh.
I didn't go through like a traditional apprenticeship where it's like you're a low man on the totem pole, you go carve the rocks. Well, there's a good reason for that type of thing coming up into something, because then you know how to do everything. I'm like, these rocks are prominent piece, and my rocks just sucked. They looked like we call them pillow rocks. It's like at the end of a sculpture, you rock out because you got to finish a bunch of mass and whatever. It's sort of rocks, but in this case, they needed to look good. And so I sucked at that. And then there was no life in the sculpture because I put it all in my maquette. And I realized it later because in my disgust, I gave this maquette to one of the organizers of the event. And then next year I came back to visit. They'd have a party, and I went to the bathroom, and in the bathroom they had my sculpture. And I looked at my maquette. I was like, "Oh, that's a beautiful sculpture." And it dawned on me, well, that's because I put everything into that sculpture. So now I tend to plan enough so I'm not screwed, because I don't like to go to an event and not know what I'm doing, but I don't overplan it, right?
So is that why you said in that one that you showed us, I think we were on the show when you showed us, I'm not sure if we were recording yet, but you said that one really flowed through you because so you kind of enough planning that can still happen, but not too much where it blocks that flow.
Yeah, like actually, I've got the this again. So it's kind of useful sometimes to figure out like the engineering of it. Like this is the
Yeah.
little maquette I made for that sculpture.
Right.
Right. So
What do
that
you make
level
that
of-
little thing out of again? Just a little bit. That's just the same sand, just a mini version.
this is just clay.
Clay. So okay.
Yeah.
Do you always do one of those?
No.
No.
Mostly I don't. But they are useful to figure out because, of course, you're gravity bending, right? So sometimes it's just useful to figure out the structure of your piece, figure out the engineering of it.
What does that mean, gravity bending?
Well, gravity is, of course,
Some of your
your
castles
enemy
would
with
be,
sand.
like,
It is just
without
sand and
direct
water.
support, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. So part of the illusion, part of the magic of sand sculpture is illusion. So that particular sculpture doesn't have a lot of risk to it, but other sculptures can. So you're doing things so that they look natural, but they're supported somehow. It might even be as simple as, like, say in this case, just where you put your hand, where you put your positions of a posture, how you're. You might even do things like it's actually stuck against a wall in the sculpture. It's like mega bas relief, we call it. So you're playing with the illusion to make it look light and flowing, but it's actually everything is supported, and that becomes an intuitive process too when you're working with it.
Wow. Can you show us some more pictures of that
Sure.
type thing?
So did you just keep practicing then right from the last world championship was there, but there's still been other competitions? Have you been practicing completely through, or did you take any time off? I know you said you're going back out building right away, right?
Oh yeah, I'll be going to Parksville in a couple weeks and competing in Parksville. But yeah, I mean, you can see some of these guys from. Let me just bring up.
Yeah, I've got you on the screen again, so that we've got that.
Okay. Like here's some. Here's a Sasquatch sculpture I did.
Oh yeah, awesome. Let's see that. Oh, look at that.
Right. So here's an example of like just positioning his arm. So it's actually contacting him. So all that stuff is supported. These trees creating support. So all these elements creating support, right?
Right. And you did the fur, like even looks like the fur is in detail too. Like, wow.
Yeah. Here's a self-portrait.
So is that one more risky when it's got like a big hole in the middle of it like that, or like this guy where there's anytime there's like an
A
air
cut through?
gap? Yeah.
Yeah, it can be for sure. What's riskier is actually overhangs because, of course, this ends up connecting here and creating an archway. So that's actually, in some ways, less risky than shear or overhangs. But it looks impressive. It's always nice to do a cut through because it looks nice. Just even having a little bit of air there just makes everything feel lighter, right?
I mean, I can't even fathom how you would do something like that.
We did the
How many
Guinness World
tons of
Record.
sand is that?
I think this was 6,000 tons of sand. And that was, what was it again? 40, oh, it's going to say here.
And sorry, what did you say that was there? That was
This
Look
is
at the
the
fucking size of
Guinness
that
World
thing.
Record.
the
Guinness World Record for tallest sandcastle.
wow.
45.85 feet. It's pretty cool. It was a nice one too.
Look at the size of it.
So you're
Oh,
so
yeah.
how do you even get so you have to start obviously at the top and then work your way down as you're climbing all over it and then finish it at the
Oh
bottom?
yeah, same thing. Although this same thing, it's all packed up into forms first.
Yeah.
And then you're working your way down, right?
Before you take off the last forms, even like
Yeah.
you're actually working in the forms too. Wow.
Yeah, you're using the forms to stand on, right?
Oh, I see. Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, that makes sense. That'd be your scaffold, and then you just take the next one down, carve that up.
Exactly.
Do you ever have to get back up there again? You look up there and you're like, fuck, we forgot to do
Sometimes,
that.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Do you have a little
sometimes,
brush?
right? Like, so here, like this is these guys starting at the top, right?
Wow.
And you're standing on your forms.
Wow, that's crazy. And so that sand on the top has to last until you get all the way down on the bottom.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Did you say there was 3 days of form work or 3 days of carving and 1 day of form work?
Yeah, on a competition, usually it's 1 day pound up, 3 days carving.
Okay,
It's typical for a competition. Like the stuff that's in the book is much bigger, a whole different scale.
Right.
Right.
What did you?
like?
Well, were you on that Guinness Book of World Record one, or is that somebody else?
Yeah. No, that's I designed. I was
Wow,
basically
really?
the design and director. I did some carving on it, but mostly I did the design and direction.
Really? So what is that part?
Yeah.
Is that
So
a
this
bunch
was
of
a
things like
team.
the Taj Mahal, the Colosseum?
Yeah. Yeah. Different world element. This was for Turkish Airlines. So one of the reasons this sand sculpture became an industry is because it garners media attention. So people ended up triggering on it to use it as guerrilla marketing. And so here's a case in point. Turkish Airlines hires us to get the Guinness World Record for the tallest sandcastle. And this becomes national news. And if you look at the cost to do a couple minutes across the United States for an ad, it's a lot, including production and everything. So here they get that part for free because it goes all across the news.
Plus, they've got
Right.
like the pyramids and the Colosseum and the Taj Mahal.
Yeah. So these are all areas that Turkish Airlines goes to from their. So case in point, we're talking about Turkish Airlines. Yeah.
Yeah.
How does the competition work then? Is that like an entry fee and then you get a prize, or just is it more like a PGA sort of thing where it's like just the fans and the other stuff is bringing in the prize money? Like what's the competition scene look like?
Yeah, it used to be more amateur than it is now. Now it's kind of mostly an invite kind of scene. So, the caliber is just through the roof.
And you've had to keep up with that, I guess, eh?
Yeah.
The technology and the caliber. And
It's just, a lot of it is like you trace it back to those days at Harrison. And this is pre-internet, and they're bringing these sculptors from around the world. And it's funny because I remember the Russians would come in, and us North Americans and the Europeans, you'd have a little bit of this thing. Well, the Russians, they're really good, but they're so stiff. Everything they do kind of looks a little bit like propaganda art. It's so stiff. Yeah, they're not so stiff anymore. Yeah.
right.
So now you've got these sculptors that they train for years and years and years. 7 years minimum training as artists. They live and breathe it, anatomy through the roof, everything, right? And now many decades later, it's carving sand that the looseness is there, the expression is there, and it's just the caliber of sculpting is just total insanity now. And yeah, as an amateur, I can't even imagine. Because when I started, you're like I was, I'm Wayne Gretzky of sand sculpting. This is easy. Yeah, not Wayne Gretzky anymore.
Has the tech changed at all, or is it just, are you doing the same sort of thing? Like, are they using computers behind this stuff? Does that translate to the field? It barely translates to the field in construction. I can't see it translating at all in art.
There's USB blowers to blow your sand away. I've picked up a couple of electric sprayers. That's something, which actually might be good for me. I've got a water curse, so anytime I've trying to use a water sprayer because, of course, sand and water is an important element. A lot of times you want to spray some water in your piece, but for whatever reason, anytime I have a water sprayer, it gets jammed up, becomes
Those
useless.
little plastic bottles don't work.
Yeah, a little plastic, but it gets sand in them. Anyways, one of the reasons and pump ones, is that sand just gets in these moving parts, right? So I've got coming in the mail an electric sprayer. So now everything's sealed. So I'm hoping now my water curse will be gone. Everything's sealed. I just press a button. So yeah, there's some new tech. Formwork's changed. I mean, there's always like searching new tool tech. Like, this year it's the horse brush, but really it goes back to the standards. We use masonry trowels and plaster trowels. Steel is the best. So not a lot of forming. The pool forms was a big kind of technology advance in a way where they're like flex forms is what they're called. They were called pool forms because somebody in California saw these old walls for these above ground pools in California. And they grabbed those and started using them in sand. They were perfect. And they got fitted around to different people. But that was a short-lived thing. And this material was like a laminated material. So it's flexible and super stiff. And
light.
When that and it was recycled, right? So when that ran out, it was gone. But now you can use any plastic that works. But that's where the term pool form came from. But really, they're flex forms, and that's something that's evolved. But really, it's still really just about the sand and water. So more people using AI to come up with ideas for sure.
You said you consider yourself not the Wayne Gretzky anymore. Who's the Wayne Gretzky now? If you had to, if they did have the world championship now, who do you think would be? Is it an American guy? Is it, who do you think's the best in the world right now?
Well, Russians, Dimitri's really good. Ilya Philomonster's amazing. A lot of the Europeans. I mean, Abe Waterman, he wins a lot. He's very good, very fast, really dialed in with expressions. Certainly at a competition level, he's probably got the most first place going on for him. So,
do you practice? Is this something like, do you have a bunch of sand in your backyard and
I do. Yeah,
and you just like pile it up and make something out of it, then knock it down and do it again?
No, I just do it. Back in the day, I'd practice. We'd go to the beach and practice, but mostly now I rely on muscle memory. And then as I get older, the muscle memory seems to be not quite so memorable.
Have any of them got to stay? Like, did this one got knocked down? Even this Guinness Book of World. Like, have you ever done one that was out of like some concrete dust that they then just stayed after?
No, I have not. Like, in fact, I think I have a picture that pile is still there. That was 2015.
Spray with some kind of clear coat.
Yeah, we have a sealer. It's like basically a white glue, water diluted mixture. Let me see. Do I have a picture of that?
And is that
what's that?
As soon as it rains, you're fucked, I guess. There's no stopping the rain.
A little bit of rain is okay. A lot of rain, not so okay. And that's basically what happened in the Kuwait job. I'll show you some pictures of that actually. Let me go there. We got, like, Kuwait has, what is it? I think officially in general it has maybe 4 inches of rain an entire year, except once every 100 years it gets a lot of rain. And that's what happened to us. So we were carving basically a theme park. This is an immersive theme park based on the Arabian Nights. 30,000 tons of sand, 6 football fields in scale. This is, $1 million project. And the rain hit. and not just one day, but 3 days in a row, and it decimated the whole park, and we had to rebuild it. And so, yeah, so that was a recovery on a grand scale. Let me bring that up.
Maybe they're weather modification your sand castles.
Well, we had one guy on the job, Paul, who was, of course, at the time I wasn't really in tune with any conspiracy theories, but I think he had some of those ideas. That's so funny too, because at the time he was saying the Secret Service are out there watching us. So I saw some guys in some black suits, and I rolled my eyes. I'm like, oh, sure, Paul, sure, okay. And it turns out they were. And what had happened is because in any Muslim Islamic art, you don't show life. That's kind of against their religion. Only God can make life.
Right.
We cut the edge with this. Like if you notice in the book, a lot of the sculptures have an abstract edge to them. There really isn't any realistic eyes or anything like that. I made a rule book actually. Like here's the boundaries of what you can do. But it still was really cutting the edge. And I guess at the time I wasn't on Twitter or anything, but people were just really going off. Like we must kill the infidels. And they debated about canceling the whole thing in Parliament. And so it turned out that we were being watched for our safety. So who knows? It could very well be.
They're like, make it rain over there on that castles. They're carving life into the sand. Make it rain.
Could have also been a lot of praying for rain.
So was
Right
you like
here.
contracting at that point then? Like you basically sounds like you were running a company that was for hire to do sand sculpting around the world? Like how
Yeah,
do
and
you
I was-
get into this with holy man? Like
Yeah,
you bid something like that, or is it just an art thing where they just come to you and you're like sort of handpicked, or how do you get involved in a project of that scale?
Yeah, and this was through. So I work a lot with the sand sculpture company, Ted Siebert. So they've been doing sand projects for decades and slowly doing bigger and bigger projects. And I would end up doing a lot of projects in the end with Ted doing the engineering side. That's where my design side of my life kind of comes in and intersects. So I would do concept drawings and form plans, a little bit more of that engineering side of things. And then we had done a project with this outfit called P2BK in Kuwait. And that was that was the year before. And it was still a pretty big project. And then the organizers of that just came up with the idea of doing this mega project. In Kuwait, like a lot of these places, it's like a bit of a chip on the shoulder. They got a lot of money from the oil, and it's like they want to prove themselves. And that's kind of a little bit what prompted this, because it's crazy. Like when he first presented it to Ted and I, we were kind of, well, should we do something like this? I mean, this is crazy. Like, I don't know. And then Ted's kind of the Captain Kirk in the relationship. I'm Dr. Spock, so Ted's like, oh, let's do it. Okay, sure, let's do it. And so it's really kind of like the book. It's like a lot of smaller steps of compulsion, right? So we say yes, not really even thinking it's going to come to fruition. A lot of these things don't come to fruition. They just kind of disappear, never mind. Yeah, but this one just kept going, and we just kept flowing with it, and here we are. So yeah, so this here you can see some of the scales. So speaking of form work, so it's just like a time lapse.
Oh, this would be great. Yeah, you can see how you throw everyone and then add to it and add to it and add to it till you get all the way up to the top.
And then you remove the forms and you carve away, and then this is the storm kicking in here. You can kind of see it hitting this tower, and then this was the first day. So we had 3 days of this storm, basically almost melted the whole thing. Yeah, so something at this scale, it was just devastating. And then we had to come back from that, and the recovery. It's funny because I did this. I call it the underdog football coach speech, right? And getting the team together and yeah, basically giving the underdog football coach, we can do this, guys. I have it written down somewhere. I don't know if I can find it anymore, but it's so funny because it's just the Europeans were all rolling their eyes and the North Americans were all super jacked by it. So
do you
but
have a
good. It
picture?
worked. I mean, we came back and fixed the thing. So
Do you have a picture of that final product at all?
oh yeah, I've got gobs of pictures. That's the whole book basically documents it.
Do you have any pictures from the book you could show us?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, the book, is that you on the cover? Is that you on the cover of the book facing there? Is that you?
No, that's other guys from the team. I'm on the I should be on the inside flap is me. I'm on the back, I think. I don't know.
Oh yeah, you're standing up on the step. Don't you get nervous
Yeah.
to go up on those steps that you might just break one?
Oh, you're careful, but it's pretty firm, especially on the
Oh, yeah, there it
horizontal
is.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I
Yeah,
meet
like
up with
this
you,
is-
Graham,
this
I'll
is a-
bring the book.
Yeah, yeah.
This is a great shot for scale. I love that shot.
Wow, yeah.
Like you just really see how we're just all in it, right? So and through the book, it's not only shots of just the art with the stories. Through the book, there's also pictures of us building it.
Yeah, and even
It's
some
kind of nice
diagrams,
because what's that?
even some like structural sort of diagrams, like drawings almost.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So on the back, I also show some of my sketches, but then yeah, Darren's kind of referring to these guys, right?
Oh yeah.
So that's a good example there. That's
Here, I'm just
That's a
gonna
form
stop
plan.
here. There. Oh yeah. Okay.
so that's a form plan, right?
Yeah.
So and we had I'll give you a good example. Here's the I think you could see the overall. Here's the overall map. Right, so that
Of
form
job,
plan,
that Kuwait job.
that's all. That's the whole project. Yeah.
Holy.
Even these sand walls, I have a little story too of these sand walls because that's their own story too. Like just doing these sand walls was crazy. Like that's all compacted
Formed.
sand and
It's all
sculpted
formed,
and
right? It's
formed.
all- yeah.
Yeah.
So how many like motherfuckers do you have on a job like that? Where shit must just be, there's got to constantly, how many guys are on that? There's just got to be something constantly going wrong.
Oh yeah. 72. We had 72 artists. And then of course when we first arrived, things weren't to plan. As Ted and I would say, we're off plan. Because it's I mean, I know now in retrospect, I understand that they just didn't have the money. They were kind of going for it anyways. There's also some cultural difference with how things are communicated. And anyway, so when they arrived, we're expecting to have this quite a large. I mean, this is quite a large area. We're expecting it to be surveyed and leveled. There's supposed to be drainage put in. We had a water plan, all sorts of stuff. Right? This is a big deal. It's like we're making Disneyland. Temporary Disneyland out of sand. And when they got there, it was the whole site was essentially a garbage dump. And I was getting messages from Ted. These like, what do you do when you've got a rusty saw and a broken bike, and you've got to pound up 30,000 tons of sand? Because it's literally what they had. They just had nothing. And then we had a container that had like, what was it, a dozen jumping jack tampers, Wacom Newsom jumping jack tampers for compacting and all sorts of gear and equipment. And we had these radios in there, and the radios were in a legal band in Kuwait. And that was, of course, in the manifest. And so they pulled it aside. And then when they opened the container, we had poker chips in there. So we never got the container.
Oh
And
my
I don't think it
god.
was. Yeah, it was always one of those things. Well, it'll be released, but never die. And I think in part because those Wacom Newsom tampers were pretty nice. So we were really behind the eight ball, and these artists are coming in, and 15 artists would roll in one day, and we're just scrambling, and we'd assign them to these sculptures, and so I'd have to team them up, and then they're working on these. We call it doubles pieces. And I remember one of the sculptors saying to me, like, why are you making us work on doubles pieces? It's so much better if we can work on solo pieces. And then you just feel at the time saying, like, look around. Do you see any sand for you to carve? You know, we're screwed. But no, you pretend it's all part of the plan. But no, we were off plan. And then the next day, another 15 artists come in, another 15. So it was madness. And then we weren't getting supplies, just weren't coming in. Like most of my time for the first majority of the project was just trying to get things every day, because everything would be, oh yeah, we'll have it tomorrow, God willing, inshallah. And tomorrow would come and it would be there. But by saying it will be there tomorrow, you kind of go at ease and you're like, okay, that's covered. I'll go on to something else. But no, it wouldn't be. So things like glue, we use the glue and water to put what we call a screen, a sealer on it to protect it. Well, it just wasn't coming. That all that stuff was in our container. And I'd mentioned before, we'd done that project for them before the year prior. Well, the site of that project was next door to this. And so Ted and I, let's go look and see if there's any leftover glue over there. And we went over there scrounging, and we found like 4 jugs of this glue. And then we went ourselves and bought some sprayers at the Home Hardware. It's not easy. It's Kuwait. It's not so easy to navigate where and how to do things. And so we managed to spray some of the stuff, which was good, because if we didn't, that storm would have done even more damage. And just look at this, like when we had the decimation, it was also nice because we had a couple guys who were part of the tech crew, they're called. So they actually have experience with sand disasters, because this whole idea comes from these sand parks that are done in Europe, and as part of the lineage of sand sculpting, they kind of blossomed as an industry actually here in California, Pacific Northwest. This, especially with this form work of making these mega sculptures. Well, a couple of partners, Todd Vanderpluim and Gary Kirk, they split up. Gary Kirk goes to Europe, and his work in Europe ends up evolving into these huge parks, beer gardens, and all sorts of stuff. Anyways, so there's a lot more experience there. One of our guys had experience with this couple project actually, but one in particular in Germany where they had total decimation. And he had the wise tip of, don't bring everybody back next day. Just bring a skeleton crew and we'll go in and we'll clean it up. And it was brilliant, because when we went there, I don't know if you can even get a sense of it from the pictures, but I'll pop some open. But it was just, it's hard to describe just the level of brutality that so you're going to the site and it's just decimation. And so we had the skeleton crew just clean everything up, right? Like, look at that, just like water just flooded everywhere and just nuts. And then so we had the crew come in, like, just these beautiful faces, they're just crumbled. Yeah, and so we got things ready, and then we built these ladders at the ready, and then afterwards we had the team come in and started fixing stuff, right? And then
So when was this, and how long did it take?
This was 2013, 2014. And I think I started on the design research stage in April of that year. And then we were on site in October. And then it went from October until basically January. And then there was another storm. So we were done in January. And we left. And then we got the phone call, oh, there's been another storm. Can you come back? So we did what I call the repair tour. So we went back with a dozen artists again and fixed things up again.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, that's something else. What kind of, are you still doing stuff like that? Like is it just competitions, or do you have any contracted builds coming up? Is anyone, man, look at the fucking size of that thing.
Yeah, so this was us recovering from the losing the tower. So this is what that palace looked like after the storm. All these towers just decimated.
Oh yeah.
This decimated. We almost, like, if it kept going, we would have lost everything. You can see this. This is what's called the pad. You can see this was starting to compromise underneath everything. Right. Yeah. And then in the end, what you're seeing here, that palace, then that's the cover. That's the cover photo. That's what we ended up. You can see the tower there. And this was a walkover palace. You could actually walk under this as well. That's Shahryar and Scheherazade.
How long did it last?
It might even still be there. They actually ran into hot water because they didn't remove it. And so it ended up having people basically went in and made a renegade BMX park in it. And but outdoors, it lasts many, many months if maintained, for sure. Indoors, these sculptures could last indefinitely.
Do you have any more pictures of that?
Oh yeah. Like, check out some of these guys.
Oh, there's some life in there.
Yeah, it's pretty. This is after things started getting a little looser with the rules. So there's almost realistic eyes there.
Yeah.
Here's a good one for scale. That's topping up the tower. Team.
How many
This was the-
fights?
What's that?
How many fights did you have with that crew?
We almost had a fight. We did have a divorce but then Johannes and Paulina are married now, so they found true love. And
Who's that
Nikolai
big-
got,
Who's that big giant titan there grabbing the building?
which one? Where?
On the left, the big giant titan in sand.
Oh, here. Oh, that's the genie from Aladdin.
The genie, yeah.
Yeah, that's the lamp genie. This is the ring genie. There's the princess there. Yeah, that was cool. That was a whole at night. They illuminated it all, and they had fire effects, and that's Enguerrand and Leonardo Uglini. Leonardo's really popular on TikTok. He's got millions of followers. Makes these cool videos. These guys, speaking of the Wayne Gretzky's, these two guys here, they're crazy. They're crazy good. That sculpture was brilliant.
Is that the biggest job you've ever done? That's got to be one of the biggest jobs ever done.
It's one of the biggest jobs ever done. I think this book is important for the sand world because I think it documents what might be the golden age of sand sculpture. I think about the people that are on this, their level of experience and whatever you want to call it, grit, fortitude. They're just, it's not necessarily being replaced. I'm a young sand sculptor. Let's put it that way. And then I think about so many people on this team. If you ask them to do something like this again, there'd be a bunch that probably say, I don't think so.
Wow.
Right. So this really might be something that ebbs and flows. I mean, I think the art of sand sculpting in general does that, like everything. Everything has its rhythm, right? And we have got early, let's exclude early Egyptians, let's say, but we've got early documentation of actually in Atlantic City of these postcards of these buskers doing sand sculptures down off the boardwalk in Atlantic City, these black and white photos from the 1920s. Well, that sort of obviously had this swell, and it kind of went away for a while. And interestingly enough, this is maybe late 70s. In the 70s, it kind of came back again, almost in a weird zeitgeist kind of way because it was happening East Coast and West Coast. So on the East Coast, this busker scene was starting to develop, where it was beach carvers, maybe even West Coast Hawaii because you had Joe Mays, but often Florida and Texas, Sandy Feet and the amazing Walter doing beach carving. And then at the same time, you had, I mentioned Todd Vanderplein and Gary Kirk doing these sculptures here on the Pacific Northwest, West Coast. And that's where you had this form work and this grand scale. And this was bubbling up at the same time. Then you had this White Rock event that moved the World Championships to Harrison. Harrison bringing all these people together, and it really blossomed to this point of evolving to these big parks, and in some ways evolving to this, because this is really a masterwork on a lot of levels. It's not only the scale, but it's all telling this one culturally significant work of literature with the Arabian Nights. And so it's really unified, and it's at a high level of art too. Like we didn't go, that's why this book exists, because I researched the stories. I curated 32 of the best stories to tell in sand. So it truly is this immersive art park. It's very high level. It's not just sort of ripping off Disney stories and doing it at a surface level. Like each one of these sculptures is depicting almost like a graphic novel. They're depicting certain scenes, and I sketched a lot of these scenes. Like for instance, like here's a sketch that I might have done. Some of them ended up being a lot closer, for instance, than but some of them varied because I basically rewrote the stories into these shorter forms so I could give them to the artists to reinterpret in their how they saw fit, so they could put themselves into the work. So they really started to get competitive with each other. Like here's a really good one. Like this is Ali Baba's cave. Like look how crazy this is. It's cool crystalline structures and just unbelievable. And and this work from Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. Like, and here's where we look at this abstract kind of faces. Look at the horses. There's a little bit of abstraction there, but
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What I was thinking about when you were showing us how the world thing evolved and how the whole technology evolved and it just reminded me of like how when humans grab a hold of something like this and how everything progresses to this point of expertise, and it must be interesting to see that happen, from 20, 30 years of where it was to now where it's at.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's like when I started doing a Coke bottle out of sand was impressive.
Yeah.
And that's still impressive, but this is a whole other level of insanity. And then you see it now in the competitions that the artistry is just unbelievable. Here's another nice thing. Like if you look at the sketch compared to the final sculpture.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Right. A lot of similarities.
Wow.
Yeah, and then
that lattice up there.
Look at the lattice.
The lattice is amazing. And that's one of the things where you look at compared to the sketch, it's like it's only better.
Right. Wow.
Right. Like that's like, so here's the idea. But
so the artists are really like making those details pop out, like even the pattern around the castellations there.
Oh yeah, that's just beautiful. And then I love this detail.
The bag, or the cushion.
Trying to capture, because what's in the frame story, Shahryar is like he's basically lost his mind. His wife was having orgies with the slaves, and he caught her, so he loses his mind and decides he's going to marry every virgin in his village and murder them after he deflowers them. And he's continuing to do that until Scheherazade offers herself up. And this is where you get the frame story. She tells him these stories, which at first basically just delays him because he's so interested. He's like, he spares her life and wants to hear another story and wants to hear another story. And then that carries on for 1,001 nights until she basically brings him out of his madness. And then they get married. And anyway, so I wanted to capture this darkness in the sculpture in some way. And this is where I had these kind of abstract skulls here, maybe. And I just love what Andre did there, where it's like just the subtle tassel on the pillow with the skull. It's brilliant, you know?
Yeah. Where can people get the book? Where's the best place for people to get this and support you and get you into that next print?
Storiesandsand.com is probably the best place.
Did the
That'll
Kickstarter pretty much buy up a lot of them, or is it you still got quite a few left?
Yeah, I've got about 150 left to go. So the Kickstarter funded most of the project, and I also set up an Etsy store, so I've been selling them on Etsy as well. The Kickstarter would direct you through to the Etsy store, and I've set up Amazon as well, but I'm waiting for. I've got the rest of the books. Like I got the bulk of the books shipped by the slow boat to a fulfillment center, so they'll be doing shipping and delivery. I won't be doing them, but I got an expedited order for some of the signed ones and things like that. So I have a few of those ready right away, and those can be got on Etsy. But eventually, I'll also have an Amazon store to sell them to.
Right on. It looks amazing. Oh my God, the Angel of Death and the Rich King. I mean, that kind of. Oh, it's just unbelievable.
Oh yeah, it's. I mean, it's cool because there's multiple layers to this book. You've got the first layer, which is these cool sculptures. And in general, that's sand sculpture. That's how most people consume sand sculptures. You look at it and go, wow, and you really have a couple minutes and then you move on. And in a way, that's what was kind of a shame with this park, is that, you know, despite even it just being ephemeral in general, like temporary, is that nobody could really sit and settle with these stories and really dig into the details. So now with the book, you can flip through it at that surface level and just look at the pictures. But then you can go through over time and actually start to read these stories from the Arabian Nights, which are quite brilliant on a couple fronts. Like one of the things that really surprised me when I started reading them and doing my research is that this is the source material for basically everything. If you want to be an author or a screenwriter, here's your source material. You know, it wasn't only Disney. Disney just made it was a little bit more obvious because they didn't change the names, but everybody's ripping off from this stuff. You know, it has all your story arcs. You know, it's got your anamorphic animals telling stories. It's got murder mysteries, romantic comedies. It's got everything.
Well,
and that really blew me away, right?
I feel like it's got more of like an authentic representation of the real stories and not just some like Disney sort of messed up version of it, you know?
No, I kept it true to the story arcs. I've just condensed them because these are mostly based on the translations by Sir Richard Burton, very overly verbose. 16 volumes. I think there's 400 some odd stories. So I'm doing you a favor. Let's put it that way. I mean, his stories are. I mean, it's interesting. There's a lot of controversy around his versions, his translations. He's a controversial character, as many people are these days. He's actually translated the Kama Sutra. So there's a lot of, but anyways, it's super interesting because there's not only a lot of people diss on the Arabian Nights. They call it very misogynistic, but it's not true. First of all, the arc story, the overarching story of Scheherazade, she's basically using her wit to
capture
in some way, to bring him out of his madness. So she's the main protagonist. And then within these stories, there's lots of female protagonists. There's even stories like the Little Hunchback, where that's like a comedy of errors story. And you know that's got the Jewish doctor and the Muslim neighbor and the Christian merchant. And in the end, there's a kind of a unity with these different religions in there. There's all sorts of stuff in these stories that are really, in some ways, I mean, you guys can relate to this stuff. I call this book it's like a spell for peace.
Yeah.
Because these stories are really, they are about that. Even the overarching element of Shahrazad bringing Shahryar out of his madness, and they get married, they fall in love, and to me, the path to peace is what I would call extreme forgiveness and the power of the word. And she's basically weaves a spell. And in these stories, and what's nice about how I've curated them is it's a little clearer, because this isn't really talked about much in the academics of these stories. But the overall arc of them is they begin with kind of the dark side of mankind. Like the three apples is almost like seven. Like they find, fisherman pulls out a box and opens the box, and there's a woman who's cut up into 19 parts. And then there's an investigation that happens, and it ensues from there. And these stories start to slowly move into stories of kind of forgiveness and ethical morals. And then in the end, with Sinbad and Aladdin, they're really stories about overcoming evil and really finding the goodness in humanity. And then of course the story ends where he's come out of his madness, come out of his revenge killing. And so there's all these super interesting layers to first of all, to the story, but also in this book, because there's that layer, but then there's also our story. So I've inserted our story of building this park and our kind of hero's journey into it as well. So it's kind of it's got these multiple layers to this book. So
I love it.
Yeah, it came out great. It's really well done. It's and it was on my coffee table for a couple weeks. All the kids have been through it. The wife's been through it. So we've enjoyed it. And I'm gonna meet up with Graham here this weekend. So I'll bring it to him so he can go through it. But I mean, it's just you're just kind of in awe as you go through it. You just sort of flip from one page to the other, because I don't know anything about the sand world. So to me, it's just one page after another of shit that's just completely out of this world. It's on a scale that I really didn't even know existed until I started going through the book. And it's like, holy man, this is like way bigger than I would have ever imagined when I think of sand sculptures.
yeah, and there's also there's the best of the best there too. Like that's cream of the crop for sand sculptors for sure.
Well, and it's good to see that, like, the art, this brilliant art surviving. I mean, I was just reading like this book, The Decline of the West, and it was talking about all these phases of art and how they go through phases, and we're really in a phase where we're losing the fine art. But this seems to bring that back to life, like the old sculptures and the old stuff from the Greek and Roman days or the classical period.
Yeah, for sure. And what I like about it is an art form that the public consumes. Right. Music is another one, but in general, the general public doesn't go to art galleries. Maybe they go to museums once in a while. But sand sculpture brings out people in droves. So it's an interesting medium that you've got an audience of the general public in media exposure. So it's interesting that on that level, like it's I like to put those subliminals in there. Right, like Liberty Crumbling was like. I'll show you just quickly that sculpture went viral. It was so, like, as a sand sculptor, every sand sculptor kind of has on their bucket list is having a sculpture go viral. And
Right.
that was mine, and it was so funny because you're like, you step away from it, and then all of a sudden it's just going off, and like, here's just an example, like this one website. And I remember going there and being like, somebody pointed out, like, oh, you look, your sculptures on the site seems pretty popular.
Zoom
in
front of it too. Yeah. Wow.
And I went there, and then I looked at, I think when I first went there, it was some like 40,000 shares or something. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I went to give somebody a link, and I was like 150,000 shares. And then I'm like, oh my God. And then I kept going back. I think in the end, it was something like 450,000 shares from just the one website. So, and it still crosses my feed every once in a while. Bill Maher shared it out.
Wow, that's
It was-
awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I mean, look at the way you aged it. It looks amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's nice because this art form can really, yeah, it can just really have an impact on people. And like you were saying, it's nice that it's got room to be, yeah, just more true art, I guess. Because a lot you can do abstract in sand. It also works. Representational. Some people do surreal stuff. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, it really is amazing. It's amazing talent to have. The book turned out great. I'm glad we had you on the show. I'm glad we did this. I hope that a bunch of people go out and buy the book because it's great. It's good to see this kind of stuff. People still pushing out and doing this kind of stuff. Where are you going on tours? Because we got Americans all over the world. Is there any place over the summer that people can come and see your work in person?
Parksville Beach Fest is the most immediate thing, and then I might do Siesta Key. That's in Florida. It's on Siesta Key Beach, and that's in November. I haven't committed yet, but I'm invited.
When's the Parksville one?
Parksville one is July 12th weekend, I believe.
Cool
beans. Well, Damon, this has been great. Of course, if people want to meet him in the chat, so you join goamerica.ca/chats and chat with the artist. Maybe you can get in on a show or come and see him or get the book signed, get the signed book, which I guess people can do through the Etsy shop as well. But
Yep.
Damon, this has been great. We appreciate you coming on the show, and we hope the book continues to do well.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for the invite.
All right, have a great night.
Yeah, you too. See you guys.
And that was a chat with Damon Langlois, Dasmo in the chats. If you're in the chat, so what'd you think?
Oh, amazing!
It must have kind of caught you off guard because you didn't really know what you were getting into.
Yeah, totally did. I just remember I remember going to a couple of sandcastle competitions, maybe even Harrison. I'm sure I even would have gone to. I remember Harrison having them. I might have even gone there because I grew up not too far from it, Maple Ridge. I was in Mission a little bit. We'd go to Harrison now and then, and we used to ski right near there. Every year we'd go to Hemlock to ski right near Harrison. So
I wonder if he does snow. I wonder if there's a snow crossover.
Oh yeah, there might be, because I saw one of these snow ones where they had a whole bar and a whole little town thing done in ice. Actually, what was that? Was it in Norway or Russia or something? But yeah, kind of similar because it looked so good, just like the sand does. Like amazing work. It just really, to me, it brings back that classical sort of sculptor feel.
Well, it just brings back like pride and workmanship. It's we don't have any real buildings that look like that, but it's cool to see that.
Feels like real art. Like I'm just not an artist at all. I've got zero art in my bones, and I can't even comprehend how people do that. I just can't even imagine. It must be.
You flip open the book, and it's just like the scale of it is just like what the fuck?
Feels very stressful to me.
Oh yeah, the debate. We missed the debate. I watched a little bit of the debate with the missus before I came down to the show, and I don't know. It looks like they had given Biden the wrong meds because he seemed like a little retarded. It was
I think he's going to come. I think he's going to come around. It's going to be there's a time release thing. He's going to finish strong. It's taken a while to kick in.
Started rough. I mean,
I know he started rough, but it hasn't kicked in yet. It hasn't.
There's a couple times where I was like, "What the fuck is he talking about?" He's like. He's crossing some streams here. It's like he's talking about immigration, but the question was, Anyway, I'm sure we'll hear all about it all over the socials tomorrow. And we appreciate you guys for listening. Big thanks to Damon for coming on the show. Get the book, of course, storiesandsand.com. Big thanks to you guys for listening. Even bigger thanks if you're one of the Lords of Gramerica. We only got a few of those, but we got a lot of nobles in the chats, a lot of nobles that support the show, help us along. Andre, you could be a lord. You could be Lord of the Gays, the Gay Lord. Okay. Anyway, Big thanks to Damon for coming on the show. Big thanks to you guys for listening. GrandAmerica.ca/support if you can, when you can. GrandAmericaOutlawed.ca for the other podcast. AdultBrain.ca for the audiobooks. Other than that, we love you guys. Thanks for listening. And we'll see you next week.
Think if I sit here long enough, fixed to this green, brown, blue spot on Earth, approximately 2,000 years. Ain't no Domini, ain't no Domini. My hot drink would turn cold. My hot drink would turn cold. My hot drink would turn cold. Dream sequence, dream sequence, dream sequence. She'd eventually roll by on her bicycle, on her bicycle, on her bicycle. That's getting all green, brown, blue, green, brown, blue, green, brown, blue. Camouflage chameleon, baby. Woke up this morning, feeling around for my shoes. Think if I hired 1,000,000 monkeys and let them mash away on some typewriters, they'd eventually write all of Shakespeare's sonnets. Maybe then you'd love me, maybe then you'd love me. Me and my monkey, get funky. Go and get funky now. Get funky. Get funky. Dream sequence. Dream sequence. Dream sequence. You'd eventually roll by on your bicycle. On your bicycle. On your bicycle. That's getting all green, brown, blue, green, brown, blue, green, brown, blue. Mother Nature's songbirds chirping. Woke up this morning, feeling around for my shoes. I love you up to the sky. 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 Dream sequence. As you were counting sheep, I rolled by on some comic relief. I rolled by on a tricycle, on a tricycle, on a tricycle. That's getting all milk and honey, milk and honey, milk and honey. To be or not to be, that is the question, baby. Woke up this morning and all my blues was dead and gone.